Is Bill Gates a typical geek who became a tech billionaire and made many expected mistakes along the way? Or is he more like a movie villain, an egomaniac with a thirst for limitless power and a god complex? Or perhaps he is something in between? Did Bill Gates become what he is today because of the wealth and power he accumulated over the years? Or did that wealth simply expose who he truly was all along? Maybe the environment changed him, or perhaps he even had to become tied to people like Epstein in order to maintain and expand his influence. The more I read and investigate about him, the more it seems to me that he is nothing like the naive geek who simply wanted to be with younger women, because he missed out on his youth while building a multi-billion-dollar company. It appears that all of his public appearances are carefully planned and serve one purpose: to present him in a better light, protect his image, and reinforce the narrative of the self-made tech billionaire. However, when you dig deeper, you quickly realize that this image may be a facade hiding a much darker and perhaps more sinister person. I cannot help but wonder, why is Bill Gates so heavily involved with vaccines? Why are so many vaccine trials and controversies connected to him? I thought he was simply a tech entrepreneur who made his fortune from software used around the world. This alone should raise red flags. You do not simply become involved with genetics, vaccines, and, above all, Jeffrey Epstein without attracting serious scrutiny. I'm sure there is a much larger iceberg beneath the surface that we know nothing about, but even with the publicly available information, we can begin to form a picture of what may lie behind Bill Gates's public image and what he is trying to protect. Looking at the Epstein files, we can immediately see that there are many questions surrounding Gates's relationship with Epstein. With the release of various documents and reports, it became clear that Gates had significant contact with Epstein despite Epstein's criminal history, and probably had some kind of relationships with possibly trafficked girls. Even before these revelations, there were reports of Gates having relationships with younger employees while married to Melinda Gates. He also used his marriage to create the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which I suspect may have been involved in activities that were not entirely altruistic. Like many large foundations, I do not believe it was created solely to help those in need. It appears increasingly obvious to me that it also served as a vehicle for Bill Gates's ambitions to gain additional power, influence, and connections among the global elite. Melinda Gates was married to him for decades and stood beside him throughout much of this period. Because of that, I find it difficult to believe that she was completely unaware of everything happening around her husband over the years. It makes me wonder how much she knew, and how much she may have tolerated before ultimately deciding to leave and publicly distance herself from both her husband and his connection with Epstein. There are so many questionable incidents involving Bill Gates that it would be easy to overlook some of them. One example is what many critics consider to be a relatively small amount donated through his charitable foundation compared to his enormous wealth. To me, this suggests that helping those in need was not the sole purpose behind establishing the foundation, and that other motivations may have played a significant role. Gates met Epstein at one of these charitable events only a few years after Epstein had been convicted of procuring a minor for prostitution. Gates also visited Epstein's Manhattan residence on multiple occasions and appeared in photographs connected to Epstein's social circle, and also in photographs from the Epstein files with young women who may be some of the victims. I cannot help but notice similarities to another powerful couple, Donald and Melania Trump, and their past connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Melania tried to shield herself and publicly addressed speculation regarding those relationships after significant public outcry. I don't think a completely innocent person would do that. There have long been rumors that Epstein played a role in introducing Melania to Donald Trump, which raises questions about what kinds of relationships existed among these individuals and what various people may know about one another. I doubt all of these connections are purely coincidental, and I suspect there may be many powerful couples in similar situations. It has also been shown in the Epstein files that Gates requested medication related to sexually transmitted diseases and attempted to slip them into his wife's food. Whether every allegation is true or not, the volume of claims and controversies surrounding him is difficult to ignore. Another issue that raises questions is Gates's status as one of the largest owners of farmland in the United States. Why would a tech billionaire want so much farmland? To me, the answer may lie in the influence that comes with land ownership. Throughout human history, ownership of land has often been associated with power, wealth, and influence. It also provides opportunities for all kinds of experimentation and profit from agricultural production and leasing arrangements. Perhaps the most concerning aspect of Gates' activities, however, is his long-standing focus on healthcare and vaccines. Years before the 2020 pandemic, he frequently spoke about the possibility of a major global pandemic and the need to prepare for it. During that same period, he invested heavily in vaccine research, healthcare initiatives, and organizations such as the World Health Organization, to which his foundation contributed hundreds of millions of dollars. When the so-called pandemic finally arrived, Gates appeared proudly and frequently in interviews and public discussions, often emphasizing that he had warned about such a scenario years earlier, or just saying, "I told you so." Not suspicious at all. To me, these investments seem designed to give him influence and authority during exactly these kinds of global events. He became heavily involved in discussions surrounding the global COVID-19 response, and was one of the most prominent advocates of lockdowns and widespread restrictions, despite the devastating economic and social consequences experienced by ordinary people. At the time, many viewed concerns about elite influence as conspiracy theories. Yet it remains notable that some of the wealthiest individuals in the world significantly increased their fortunes during this period, while millions of ordinary people struggled in every way possible. At the time, it was considered a crazy conspiracy theory to even suggest any ill intent by the elites, especially Bill Gates. Even now, when you Google anything negative that we know happened regarding Bill Gates during this period, the results are heavily censored, flagged as conspiracy theories, or simply impossible to find. But the truth has its own way of coming to light, and ironically, what Bill Gates may have hoped would be his time to shine became a nightmare instead. In 2019, the controversies and conspiracy theories surrounding him arrived like an avalanche, and no one seemed able to stop them. He was constantly criticized across the internet, while at roughly the same time, Melinda Gates filed for divorce and appeared to distance herself from whatever compromising events may have occurred during their marriage, something that many people believe is reflected in some of her interviews. All of this became even harder to ignore after the partial release of the Epstein files, when the image behind the Gates facade came under intense public scrutiny. The facade that Gates had spent decades building seemed to crumble almost overnight. Despite all of this, it is sad to see that almost no one was arrested for everything that happened after 2020, especially regarding the COVID-19 farce and the Epstein files, which suggests that numerous people involved remain powerful and protected. It also raises the question, is our system so dependent on these individuals that they have effectively become untouchable? The only high-profile figure who faced significant consequences was former Prince Andrew, and even that was for entirely different reasons. I truly hope this vicious cycle will eventually come to an end, and that those at the top who possess real power and influence will be held accountable if wrongdoing is proven, but I honestly have my doubts. If you found this video at least half interesting, please consider subscribing and joining me in this uphill battle. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.